First, they took Barney into one room, and I went into a second room. In this room, they did what I would call a fairly simple physical examination.
They carried me on into that craft, and inside it was a round compartment or room.
Here, there in front of me, it was the most shock I've ever had in my life.
We've all heard the usual UFO stories. Lights in the sky, a blurry photo, an online forum that never sleeps. But have you ever wondered what happens when the evidence is more than just a rumor? But some accounts come with something harder to ignore. Recorded hypnosis sessions, cops' audio, police interviews, and modern documentaries with witnesses still shaking when they talk. This is where things get real. Tonight, in 8 minutes, we'll move from the first famous abductions to newer investigations backed by audio, archives, and streaming documentaries. Listen closely. The human voices are what stay with you. September 19th, 1961. Betty and Barney Hill, just an ordinary couple driving home late on a country road, see a light under the moon. At first it's a plane, then it's not. Intrigued yet? Barney grabs his binoculars. He reports a disc, silent, hovering maybe 80 to 100 feet above the car, with humanoid shapes looking back. 2 hours vanish. Years later, under hypnosis, both describe being taken aboard. A ramp, a curved corridor, fluorescent white rooms.
First, they took Barney into one room, and I went into a second room. In this room, they did what I would call a fairly simple physical examination. They seemed to have mostly interest in my skin. I had the idea they were taking pictures of my skin, also interest in my hands and my feet. They also did a test which they called checking my nervous system.
Wild, right?
Barney, hypnosis. I don't want to be operated on. Betty describes telepathic questions about aging and time. Barney speaks of grayish beings, 5 feet tall, slanted eyes. Their lives changed. Nightmares, public scrutiny, and the tapes recorded by Dr. Benjamin Simon in 1964 remain chilling.
11th, 1973. Charles Hickson and 19-year-old Calvin Parker are fishing on the Pascagoula River when a blue glowing craft appears. Both say they were paralyzed, floated into the craft, and examined by 3 wrinkled robotic creatures with crab-like pincers. Can you imagine? They went straight to the sheriff.
They carried me on into that craft, and inside it was a round compartment or room.
Unknown to them, deputies left a recorder running in the interrogation room. On the tape, frightened, hushed voices. The tension is real.
Hickson, whispering, "I know they're real, Calvin. God have mercy. I know they're real." Even staunch skeptics note, it's hard to imagine someone sustaining that terror when they think the police are listening. The Pascagoula tape is raw human fear, and it pushed this case into national headlines.
And we stopped. They stopped me, it seemed like in the middle of the room, like the light was coming out from the wall, and the overhead. They just left me, but I wasn't touching anything. In a leaning position. And
Pascagoula, Antonio Villas-Boas, a Brazilian farmer, reported being taken aboard a craft in 1957. He described an invasive medical exam, then something stranger, sexual contact with a female humanoid. Her features, white hair, red pubic hair, large eyes, shocked researchers and the public alike. This story is wild. Doctors later documented marks and what were reported as radiation burns. Villas-Boas never chased fame. He stuck to the story his whole life. That's dedication. Whether you believe it or not, his account became a foundation for later abduction narratives, one of the earliest detailed personal testimonies. It set the stage for everything that followed. November 5th, 1975. A logging crew in northern Arizona stops when they see an enormous bright object. Travis Walton approaches. A beam of light slams him to the ground. The crew flees. When they return, he's gone. Talk about a mystery.
Well, they were shorter than me. I'd say about 5'2" or 3", and they didn't have a neck. Their head, it seemed to come directly to their shoulders.
5 days later, he reappears, disoriented, with an account of grays and tall, human-like beings, of being on a table and struggling away. The case triggered a manhunt, polygraphs, accusations, and a roaring media circus. Most crew members passed polygraphs. Walton's results were mixed over time. The drama just keeps building.
Authorities are baffled by the disappearance of Travis Walton.
Travis's story was dramatized in a feature film and remains one of the most famous abduction narratives, partly because of the 5 missing days and the trauma etched into the crew's memories. It's unforgettable. Betty Andreassen's 1967 reports were different in tone. Investigated by Raymond Fowler, her testimony combined the clinical with the mystical. Greys entering her home to freeze her family in place while she was taken aboard, then shown visions of destruction and renewal. Almost religious prophecy. This one really stands out. Her hypnosis tapes, where her voice breaks describing beings moving through walls and telepathic warnings, added a spiritual layer to abduction lore. For many, Andreassen's case offered the unnerving idea that these encounters could be about meaning, not only medicine. Those are the old cases, the seeds of modern abduction stories, missing time, paralysis, medical procedure, and the voices that refuse to quiet. Next, newer investigations, legal battles, and archival audio projects that bring these stories into the streaming era.
The newer cases and documentaries. 6. Linda Napolitano, The Manhattan Abduction, 1989 NYC, November 30th, 1989. Linda Napolitano, in her Manhattan high-rise, claims she was floated out of her 12th-floor apartment window in a blue beam of light. Witnesses? At least 20 people, including security staff and delivery drivers, claim to have seen something. Some wrote anonymous letters describing a woman levitating toward a glowing craft near the Brooklyn Bridge. Inside, Linda recalled stomach probes and a possible implant in her nose, later showing up in X-rays. Her case was backed heavily by ufologist Bud Hopkins, but skeptics point to unverifiable witnesses. In 2024, Netflix released a 3-part docuseries revisiting her story. Linda herself has sued Netflix, claiming defamation. I didn't want to believe it, but it happened. 7. Amazon Abduction Reports, Peru, 2023. In 2023, indigenous tribes in the Peruvian Amazon reported repeated abduction attempts by beings described as tall, armored, and floating. Some locals called them face peelers. Researcher Timothy Alberino traveled to investigate, documenting testimonies of attacks and sightings. Villagers described bright lights and paralysis, eerily similar to earlier cases. Though officials dismissed it as gangs with advanced tech, the reports mirrored half a century of abduction lore. 8. Elizabeth Clarer's story began in the 1950s South Africa, claiming long-term contact and even a romantic relationship with a humanoid alien named Akon. For decades, she was dismissed, but the 2023 documentary Beyond the Light Barrier reframed her story, treating her not as a crank, but as a woman who gave detailed, consistent testimony over 30 years. Love, childbearing, interstellar travel. Her case tests the boundary between contactee fantasy and genuine phenomenon. Nightly archival audio projects. Rice University 2023. Modern digitization projects have unearthed lost audio tapes from the 1960s, 70s, hypnosis sessions, police calls, witness interviews. Some of these recordings have never been released publicly. They reveal raw fear, people gasping, crying, whispering about lights, paralysis, missing time. It's the human side of the phenomenon that no skeptic can brush away. Archival snippets, faint whispers, and a quiet line. Lights, missing time. 10. Alien Abduction, The Strangest UFO Case Files, 2023 series. Finally, modern compilations like Alien Abduction, The Strangest UFO Case Files bring together dramatizations, interviews, and witness footage. These shows bridge old cases with modern patterns. Lights, paralysis, medical exams, missing time. They prove the stories never stopped. They just evolved, keeping pace with our technology. From Betty and Barney Hill to the Manhattan Abduction, from rural fishing trips to skyscrapers in New York, the pattern is the same. Missing time, paralysis, medical procedures, witnesses, and fear that never fades. We've looked at the oldest audio recordings and hypnosis sessions, and the newest documentaries and digital archives. Skeptics will say hoax, hallucination, or mass hysteria. But when you hear a man sobbing under hypnosis, or a villager whispering about beings floating through the forest, you realize the human experience of abduction is real. whether or not the beings are. And that's the question left hanging. Are we alone? Or have we always been someone else's experiment?